Hi class, this is lesson 26 for course 2. But first, I want to talk about modeling fraction multiplication and modeling fraction division. I think it's important for you to see what's really happening here. So if we do 3/4 times 2/3, and I'd like you to put this in your notes, we can model this by using 4 columns and 3 rows. Okay, or we could do it the other way around. We could do 4 rows and 3 columns. So I'm just going to draw a rectangle here with 4 columns. So I'll cut it in half, cut it in half again. Okay, there's 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to do that in red. Okay, so I have 3 out of those 4 columns, right? So I'm going to shade this in just a little bit so you can see I have 3 out of the 4. Okay, I'm going to switch colors here, and you may want to do this in your notes too, but now I need 3 rows. So I'm going to draw 2 lines going horizontally. That represents the 1, 2, 3 rows, and I have 2 of those 3 rows. Okay, so now I'm going to shade this in, that top row, and then the bottom row. Okay. Now, this is pretty cool here. How many spots do I have? Altogether, there would be 3, 6, 9, 12, right? So I'd have 12 groups, and the area where we overlap over total. That's our product when we multiply. So how many did we shade in both colors? Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 out of 12, which when we simplify, we would divide both of those by 6, we would get 1/2. So when I multiply 3 times 2, I get 6. And when I multiply 4 times 3, I get 12, which is 6/12, which is 1/2. So that's really what you're doing when you multiply. I think it's kind of neat to see that represented with a model. Now fraction division is pretty cool too. Okay, if I want to model 2 1/4 divided by 1/2. Okay, first I need 2 units. Okay, so I'm going to draw 2 circles because those seem to make sense to me. 2 circles. That's the 2 whole numbers. And then I need 1/4 of a circle. Okay, so see if I go like this and then like that, right? It's kind of 1/4 of a circle. Okay, now I need to divide it in half. So here's a half, right? So now I have 1/2 here and 1/2 here. Well, how many halves do I have? I have 1/2, 2 halves, 3 halves, 4 halves. Okay? Now, so I'll have, this will end up being 4. And what happens here? What fraction of a half is it? Well, if I were to complete this, I'd end up with a half right here, right? This would be roughly a half of a whole. Well, this would be half of a half. So I end up with 4 and 1/2 halves in 2 1/4. So when we divide by fractions, we actually get bigger numbers as a result. Okay, and we'll work through that a couple examples here as we continue. So first, there are some rules that we need to write down. Again, this is lesson 26, multiplying and dividing fractions and mixed numbers. Very important for you to follow these steps. Common denominator is not needed. You don't have to do anything with the numbers when you multiply. Okay, and I should note that this is for multiplication. Okay, failed to do that. The lesson is on multiplying and dividing fractions and mixed numbers. We're first going to talk about multiplication, then we'll talk about division. So if fractions are, first, no common denominator needed. Then if fractions are mixed numbers, before, and I want you to make sure that you understand that and do that every time. Before you multiply, you change the mixed number to an improper fraction. Multiply numerators, multiply denominators, and simplify the product. Now, you may simplify before multiplying as long as you reduce one numerator with one denominator. Okay, so it has to be top to bottom, straight up and down, or it has to be diagonal top to bottom. But it cannot be both on the same side of the fraction bar. Okay, here are some examples. Multiplying fractions. I'll go back to the red pen. That seems to show up pretty nice for us. Okay, so if I have 5/8 times 2/3. Okay, these are both just fractions. I don't need a common denominator. What we're really doing here is combining these fractions like this. Then we can multiply and we get 10/24. And we know that we can reduce that by 2. So if I divide by 2 2's, I get 5/12 as my final answer. I'm going to do multiplying whole numbers first, and then we'll go down to mixed numbers. Here's an example. If I have 3/7 times 12. Okay, that's really, we can represent 12 as a fraction by putting a 1 under it. So we're really doing 3/7 times 12 ones. Okay, which is still the same thing as 3 times 12 divided by 7 times 1, which is 36 divided by 7. Okay, now this is improper, so I would need to divide that out, right? Remember that 36 goes in the box, the 7 goes outside, so how many times does 7 go into 36? Let's see, 6, 5, 4, 5 times, 35, and then remember to write your remainder as that leftover fractional component out of 7 pieces. So we would have 5 and 1/7. So 3/7 times 12 gives us 5 and 1/7. Multiplying mixed numbers, if I have 2 and 3/5 times 4 1/2. Remember that you have to make these into improper fractions first. Okay, and remember that you would multiply first and then add, and then we keep the denominator. So 5 times 2, 5 times 2 equals 10, plus the 3 equals 13. So it's 13/5. And if I did the same thing here, we get 2 times 4 equals 8, plus 1 equals 9. So I'm going to multiply that times 9. Remember, keep the denominator 9/2. So that's going to equal 13 times 9 over 5 times 2. And 13 times 9 is, let's see, 9 times 3 is 27. So carry the 2, 9 times 1 is 9, 10, 11. 117 over 10. Again, that's improper, and we don't want to leave improper numbers. We want to convert them back into mixed numbers. So 10 goes into 117 how many times? 1, 10, 17, 1, 10, 7. So it's 11 and 7/10 with that remainder. Again, that simplification before you multiply it. Let's just put that over here. If you simplify first, question mark. Okay, so I'm going to do this example again, and we're going to simplify first. So we have 5/8, and if you have room under there, go ahead and show that, times 2/3. Okay, now, I know that the greatest common factor between 2 and 8 is 2. So I can divide a 2 out of the 2 and leave a 1, and I can divide a 2 out of the 8 and leave a 4. Remember, I did numerator to denominator. Now if I multiply, 5 times 1 is 5, 4 times 3 is 12, I get the same answer that I had the first time, but I didn't have to do a whole lot of work there. Okay? Dividing fractions in mixed numbers, remember reciprocals are numbers with a product of 1. So if I have 3/4, its reciprocal is 4/3, and when I multiply, I get 12/12, which will reduce to 1. That product of a reciprocal and its, or two reciprocals, a number and its reciprocal will always be 1. Okay, here are the rules for fraction division. Common denominator is not needed. Again, if fractions are mixed numbers, before you divide, you change the mixed number to an improper fraction. Keep the first fraction, flip the second fraction to its reciprocal, and then multiply, change the sign. You might know it KCF, KFC. I know it as invert and multiply. Whatever makes sense to you. Okay? If you divide by a fraction, here's an example. 2/3 divided by 5/6. Okay, remember those rules. Keep that first fraction. Keep the first fraction, so 2/3. We're going to change that sign, multiply. Flip that fraction to its reciprocal, 6/5. And then those rules for multiplication still work the same. You can simplify if you want to first, or multiply straight across. 6 times 2 is 12. 3 times 5 is 15. There is a common factor here, so we need to divide both of these by 3, giving us 4/5 as our answer. If we do a problem with a mixed number, we have 9.5 divided by 2 3/4. Okay, make them improper. So multiply. 2 times 9, 18, plus that 1, 19, keep the denominator 2's. Divided by 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3, 11/4. I would suggest that you do that step separate from all the changing and flipping. Okay? If you do the improper fraction first, then go back through, I think you'll find that you make fewer mistakes. So again, keep the first fraction, 19/2. Change that sign to multiplication, reciprocal, 4/11, and then multiply. 19 times 4, I'm going to work that out over here. 36, 76. So I have 76, and I know that 2 times 11 is 22. Again, this is improper, so I can't leave it like that. Divide it out. 22 goes into 76. How many times? Let's see. 22, 44, 66. It's like 3 times. And I have 10 left. So it's 10 left out of that divisor 22. 10 and 22 are both even numbers, so divide both of those by 2. And we're going to have that fractional component of 5/11. Now don't do this. Okay, don't do that. Write the whole number and the fraction next to each other and circle it. If you write 3 and then do all this and then show me the fraction over here, I'm likely to think it's 5/11, and I will count it wrong every single time. Okay, I know I went through that really fast, but again, those rules are very straightforward. If you follow these rules here and here for multiplying and dividing fractions, you will be successful. So follow the rules, please. And I'll see you in class.